We'd just like to bring your attention back to those visuals. That's the US President's plane. That's Air Force One, which has now landed at Palam Airport a little ahead of schedule. So we can, in fact, make that announcement. President Obama is on Indian soil. He has landed in India for his 3-day visit. First visuals coming to you of the US presidential aircraft, Air Force One, landing in the national capital. Maya Chandani also joining us at this point. Maya, as we see those visuals of Air Force One landing, we've been talking here about India and its neighbors and how they are viewing this presidential visit, the second in President Obama's term. To what extent will this renewed engagement with the US really give us leverage, if you call it that, over Pakistan?
Well, Ankita, I think the issue of leverage that we can get from the US relationship vis-a-vis Pakistan is a very sort of tenuous question, because at the end of the day, the United States has, in spite of its strong words and very clear policies on the need for Pakistan to not have safe havens, to come down heavily on terror operating from within its soil, they've employed a carrot and stick policy for years towards Pakistan. And I think one needs to be cognizant of the fact that the United States has its own imperative and agenda and isn't going to simply follow what the Indians have said. Having said that, there's been tremendous cooperation on counter-terrorism. In fact, some of the things expected to come up in talks of the delegations today is also meant to be information sharing in real time, cooperating on intelligence gathering, things like that. Now, before coming to India, President Obama gave an interview to a leading news magazine over here, and he said that safe havens in Pakistan are unacceptable. Now, the general response to that comment has been, there's been nothing new in what he said. This has been a United States position. He's just reiterated it. It hasn't really led to any strong action by Pakistan on the ground, in spite of the fact that the Pakistanis themselves now are victims of their own terror groups and are suffering as a result of it as well. So, you know, the question really on Pakistan remains on what the world can do vis-a-vis the Pakistan government, what the Pakistani government is willing to do, how much are their hands tied or not tied, as the case may be, and sort of keeping all those aspects of the matrix in mind when you're actually having these talks. I think India has to realize that its own imperatives to work on the issue of terrorism with the United States has to take a separate kind of space, even though Pakistan is intrinsic to that issue.
Well, as we see these visuals of Air Force One landing in Palam Airport, we can now announce that the Obamas are in India. We should see those visuals of them coming out in just a few minutes from now, possibly. But on terrorism and regional security, Vivek Karchu, of course, President Obama, in that interview that Maya was referring to, talking about Pak terror havens as unacceptable. All the rhetoric, of course, has been there. But talks on, when it actually comes down to talks on information sharing, on intelligence cooperation, on cyber security, what is it that India will be hoping for?
Well, on Pakistan, let me just say a word. These interviews cut no ice with me. America needs Pakistan in the Afghan context, and that need is fairly desperate. Pakistan, in fact, holds the key to a stable Afghanistan. So let's keep that aside. As far as intelligence sharing is concerned, there is always a quid pro quo. Now, the real issue is, are we willing to pay the price for greater intelligence sharing? I'm not clear about that. Somehow or the other, we have the impression that all this will be a one-way street. America will give and we will take. At the end of the day, you've got to decide whether you are willing to really get into deal making, because the Americans are transactional. They always have been. And that is something which somehow or the other our polity and our administrative setup is still very wary of. Deal making. Deal making is a pejorative term in India, but with the Americans it's a way of life. in this area as in other areas.
See, Rajamohan, would you say that that is equally true of the Modi administration? Because, you know, here we have an administration talking about President Obama's visit as a diplomatic coup of sorts and clearly signaling an end to this ambivalence that there has been in the Indo-US relationship.
I think Vivek was right. I mean, I think in the past, we don't want to give anything to anybody, but we want everything from everybody to us. But life in real world is about give and take, right? I mean, so in individual life or the life of a nation, the question is, you've got to make that judgment. Look, are you prepared to say, look, I don't want to cooperate with the Americans at all, but I'm going to fight with Pakistan on my own. But the fact is today, on terrorism, everyone agrees you've got to deal with it through expanded international cooperation. For example, on 26/11, I think the US help was important. But before the US level, before it happened, their help was not good enough. I mean, that they had a track of David Headley, they didn't tell us. So the question is, can we elevate the level of engagement so that we can benefit, we give them something, they give us something. My sense is, you are right, this government does not have the hang-ups of the previous governments, of being afraid of your own shadow, unwilling to engage in bargaining and deals. I think there is a new confidence in Delhi, the sense of a rising power. We can deal with the rest of the world on a let's cut deal today.
And is that true of the way the US perceives the present administration as well, that this is a prime minister with a mandate that sort of allows him to make decisions that perhaps previous administrations could not?
I think there's a great deal of optimism in the United States, but also some wariness, because we've been here before. 10 years ago, you know, much of the same sort of enthusiastic language that is being used about Prime Minister Modi. Just do a Google search, you'll see it was being used about Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, and things didn't quite pan out as many people had expected. On Pakistan, though, I just think a couple of things are important here. The first is that in the US itself, there's no consensus on how to deal with Pakistan. The State Department, for example, would argue that Pakistan is indeed key, at least to securing things during the 18 months President Obama has. They don't want some kind of disastrous ISIS-like meltdown. But in the Defense Department, you will hear very, very different kinds of voices saying Pakistan is the problem, not the solution. And currently, if you look at the White House, for example, a lot of the advice President Obama is getting is from
Right, I think we
National
are, in
Security
fact,
Council
if I could just
staff
interrupt you there for a second, the doors have opened of Air Force One, so that's the moment really India has been waiting for, this unprecedented second visit to India by President Obama. What is this going to mean for India's ties with the United States? Is this really going to be a transformative visit, or is it going to be more about the atmospherics, more about symbolism of solidarity rather than concrete steps forward? These are, of course, the big questions we'll be tracking through the day today as that crucial bilateral meeting takes place between Prime Minister Modi and President Obama. To quickly run you through President Obama's very packed schedule today. He will be meeting the President. That ceremonial welcome will happen at Rashtrapati Bhavan around noon. Following that, the much talked about visit to Mahatma Gandhi's Samadhi, Rajghat. Then on to a lunch engagement with the Prime Minister, followed by the bilateral meeting at Hyderabad House, expected to last for at least an hour. We're also being told that there will now be a one-on-one walk that the two heads of state will share. But those visuals coming to you live currently from Palam Airport, where any moment now we can expect the Obamas to disembark from Air Force One. Well, for some reason, this always seems to take a great deal of time. If it is a big plane, but
and Mr. Obama probably has to straighten his tie and make sure his shoes are on right. He has been flying for a long time.
And then there may certainly be security procedures involved as well. Apart from the fact that the red carpet didn't seem quite aligned to.
No. Let me, if I may.
Yes.
I think the red carpet is put and aligned just before the VVIP disembarks.
Right.
Because of the aircraft movement, if you place the red carpet earlier, the red carpet moves and shifts. So therefore, that's something which has to be taken into account. Plus, the lineup takes place.
And we now can see the Prime Minister as well there to welcome his very high-profile visitor. The Prime Minister making that personal trip to the airport to receive the US
I
president.
told Rajan that I expected that he'll be there.
So would you see this as a very significant step, the fact that the Prime Minister is actually
I think
at the
the last time perhaps was for King Abdullah when Prime Minister Manmohan Singh.
No, didn't Prime Minister Manmohan Singh also go for President Bush?
He did.
I'm not sure. I don't
He
think
did,
so.
he did, he
He
did.
did? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, he did.
So this is
It was, in fact, in Gujarat had gone to
So in
receive
2006,
President Towers,
Manmohan went. Okay.
Also to Abdullah.
Okay.
In fact, they even had a negotiation on the tarmac then because the problems were not sorted out at that time. But I think this was unexpected. I mean, I think, but it's quite, I think, an important.
Okay, but also sort of in line with all the talk there has been of this sort of personal rapport that is shared by the two leaders. But, to go beyond, personal chemistry can't really sustain in that sense in Indo-US relationship, can it?
Look, I think both objective and subjective are needed. Without the existing, good circumstances, you can't advance a relationship. But you don't without good people who connect with each other. Also, you're not going to be able to do it. So I think what we've seen is, after the election last year, the Americans had reason to be guilty that, look, we neglected this man, now reach out. That's what Obama did. Now, Mr. Modi said, look, I'm not going to make my political issues
And
as
then
a
there
personal
actually,
one. And I
we'll
think he
just
reached
reflect on those pictures again. President Obama and the First Lady of the United States, Michelle Obama, now coming down the stairs of Air Force One. They're here, they're in India, and over the next 3 days,